Hi guys, my name is Dr. Sharnael Wolverton-Sehon. I am with Swiftfire. Super excited tonight because we have James Rink here with us. You can find him on Facebook under the name James Ring, but James Rink is here with us, and he is a speaker. He's an author, and he is a director of an awesome documentary called Changes on the Horizon. The focus of that documentary has to do with just the whole Nesara topic. And I'm really excited to get him jumping in here and kind of give us a little bit of background about what Nesara is, some of the history involved with that, as well as what that means to us here now, presently, what that means to us as individuals and also as our families, what that means to us as a country. If anyone's going to talk about it or understand it, this guy, I'm telling you, his documentary is 3.5 hours long. It's very, very detailed, and I'm just really excited. I actually met him about 2 months ago, just through this whole SSP stuff and the Montauk Project and different things, and he was very much a part of my integration of some of these awarenesses that have come up here recently. And I'm just super thankful for him and what he's doing on the planet. It's been super awesome getting to know him a bit better and just seeing what he's doing. So without further ado, I'm super thankful to have you here, James, and looking forward to seeing what we can do to help people get in a better position to really understand this and also know how to operate within the knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah, thank you, Sharnael. Much appreciated. Thanks for inviting me on here. And we have a lot of information here we need to cover. Is limited. Its time is limited. Let me go ahead and begin with. By the way, the bio is excellent. There's a lot more you could add to it, but we'll go into that. We'll try to touch into it later. But to begin with, Nesara is the National Economic Security and Reformation Act. It gets rid of the IRS, the Federal Reserve, returns us back to constitutional law, and helps release enormous amounts of wealth and funds to not just Americans, but to Nesara applies for the people in the United States, but it's been extended apparently. Now I can't confirm yes or no, but we'll discuss a little bit about that later. So how this all began. Now, for me anyway, my self-awakening, I started looking into Nesara soon after, I would say around 2005 when I started investigating. Of course, around that time, Loose Change came out, which is a documentary about 9/11, and I was doing a lot of research at a website called 4winds10.com, and it's still around. It's an excellent website. I would say probably 95% of the content of Changes on the Horizon came from 4winds10. So Patrick Bellringer has done an excellent job with what he's done over the years. The website may not look as nice as some of the news sources out there, but the content is really what matters. So anyway, 4 Winds and the digit 10 is how it's spelled. So anyway, now, otherwise you go to the boat company, so the point is I decided to put together a documentary because I got really tired and I wouldn't say frustrated, but there was these, I guess what you call these indie type film productions where people were talking about different conspiratorial things, about JFK or 9/11 and this and that. So, but nobody was really going into Nesara. And it's like, well, this is a very important thing because at that time, Nesara.us website was up with, that was Shawnee Goodwin, and aka Devil Oneness, and so I would get her reports as well. And so how about we go ahead and begin with a summary, because I've been putting together this timeline for the greater part of today to kind of summarize my notes here. I'm not going to go so much into Saint Germain stuff because it is just too much to go into, because that takes us into down the esoteric road, which is could take a long time to go into. But So essentially, the summary of Changes on the Horizon, it's a 3-hour documentary, and the first hour we go back into the Masonic societies, how Freemasonry was set up with the certain ideas to elevate humanity, which were hijacked, and the key figures involved, and one of that was Saint Germain. So the now, I mean, there's no way to confirm it because I can't say I've actually met Saint Germain. Said, hey, is this all true? So I'm just going to give you basically what the research that I put together, and this is what basically what historians are thinking is that Francis Bacon was, or he is Saint Germain, or rather Saint Germain. Francis Bacon became Saint Germain. So yeah, we go back in time, and that I'm not sure when he was born. Some 1500s, but when Queen Elizabeth, he was the son of a secret marriage between Queen Elizabeth and Sir Robert Dudley. So she never acknowledged it. That's why they considered her the Virginia Queen, and they named the state of Virginia after the Virgin Queen, which apparently she wasn't, but it didn't matter because at that point in time, women didn't have much rights or power. So she certainly didn't want to give it up to a man. So that's why she never acknowledged Francis to be her son. But Francis, instead, he worked with Masonic secret societies to create certain types of, I guess, ciphers and to decode information, esoteric information, and also was part of like spy networks. But yeah, he faked his death, and then in 1684 he became Saint Germain, and that's the May. I think it was May 1st, if I'm not mistaken, 1684 Saint Germain Day. But yeah, so he became Ascended Master, and at that point, what it basically means to become Ascended Master is when you do a certain amount of right decisions over your incarnations, you're given the option to go into a higher dimension. You can leave humanity and go into the higher realms, but he chose to come back to help humanity because he wanted to see a day when all the rest of us become ascended masters, because that's the whole goal, is for us to become like God eventually, for those of us who are on that path. So he goes to Venice, fraternizes, not too much important that period, but then in 1727 he works with the Rothschilds to teach them secret alchemical techniques to turn lead into gold. And he was hoping the Rothschilds would use their wealth through the banks to help humanity, and they certainly had no intentions of doing that. They wanted to keep it for themselves. So they got the secrets on how to turn lead into gold, and they also knew how to turn the fiat money, and that all goes into we're going to the Venetian banking. Oh, keep going. You can just mute your. You can mute your. You know what? I just mute Dr. Sharnael. So Sharnael, if you hear me, you're gonna have to unmute yourself. You got another, or just shout. Oh, I guess you can't shout at me. Yeah, I muted you. So if you have a question, you have to unmute yourself. Okay. All right. So yeah. So he created the World Trust to basically, it's a counteraction. His own plan. He put his own money into there. The goal was to release to humanity when humanity was ready to receive the wealth, and he tentatively put that date around the year 2000. So then he goes, fraternizes around the world, learning more about chemical secrets and sharing technological innovations that he was working on with people that took credit for his work. So he gave away a lot of his information there. And then he was also working with the Louis the 15th at his alchemical workshop at the Chateau of Chambord in Touraine. And then he also was working with Louis the 16th when Marie Antoinette, but they ignored his warning, and that's because he was warning them about the encyclopedists were creating a conspiracy. I'm confident it was connected with the Illuminati secret society, as well as the Red Shield. to overturn the French monarchy. So he tried to stop that, but they weren't paying it. They didn't pay him any attention. Matter of fact, Saint Germain was trying to create a United States of Europe. That's why he was working with a lot of these royalty back then, because he knew if he could create a United States of Europe, it would create an alternate reality where we would basically be like Star Trek right now. And this story was actually relayed to me. There was an insider who said that he worked with, he had certain CIA classification, and a drone craft went missing and reappeared over the UK. And someone, Captain Michaels, said he was from the United Federation of European Free States, and to state who you are. And then the video feed turned on, and they saw what looked like very, very advanced Star Trek type vessels levitating in the sky. It looked like and he said it was the year 1999. So I think if Saint Germain would have been successful, we would have had all this advanced technology. Tesla would have eventually come out, the free energy and all that. None of that would have been suppressed. We wouldn't have had to go to World War I, II, and the Nazis and all that stuff. It would have been, yeah. But anyway, it is what it is. So moving on here, going on here. So he worked to create the United States of America. He supposedly showed up at the Independence Hall when they were signing the Declaration of Independence. He's actually on, I think, the $20 bill. The guy with the hat. If you pull up your $20 bill and look for it, maybe I can see if I can find it. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not the $20 bill. I don't know. Remember which one? Do you remember what, Sharnael? Do you remember which note it was? Where they're in Independence Hall. If you gotta unmute yourself, or I'll do it for you.
I don't remember actually, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, maybe if we have time, we can pull that up. But anyway, so then he was also working to try to stop the Bavarian secret society from rotting out the Masonic lodges, but he created a countermeasure to do that called the Philalethes, and that was with Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel along with Cleostro. So yeah, I put the pronunciations there. Some of this stuff is in French. So I'm like, well, I don't know how to pronounce. I want to make sure I pronounce the words right. But so that, yeah, but anyhow, so, and also Saint Martin, Franz Mesmer, and Cleostro. These French philosophers were involved with the secret society, but the Masonic lodges rejected his teachings. Instead, they chose to go with the Illuminati. So then Saint Germain realized he gave up on creating the United States of Europe, and he decided to move on to I guess he goes to Shambhala eventually. Shabbalam Master goes to Inner Earth into down there to get away. I'm not sure what he was doing for that period, but hopefully it was something fun or worthwhile. Anyway, so then while all that's going on, because Saint Germain disappears from Europe around 1805, I think it was, because that's when Napoleon, he withdrew support from Napoleon. But so while that was going on, the United States, of course, already formed the Republic, and it's gone. We had Andrew Jackson tried to kick out the bankers. The original founding fathers, when they and by the way, you're just gonna have to let me know if I'm going over time. But the initial founding fathers, they knew that the British, even though they got the Republic back, they knew the British were always trying to find a way to take it over again. So what they did was they created a compromise. There were a lot of war debts that were coming due, and I know, a lot of our founding fathers talked about men are all, men, I guess women too, they should be mankind, but men and women are created equal, but obviously they kept slaves. So there was a lot of discussion amongst the founding fathers to cancel out slavery. But the problem was that we had the economy was extremely unstable at the point at the end of the Revolutionary War. So even though we had a republic, the bankers were trying to find a way to tear it all down. So they were not able. They decided to not to destabilize the economy by freeing the slaves, which eventually, of course, we know that created a civil war. Well, there was a lot more stuff going on that caused a civil war. But the point is that fast forward, Andrew Jackson, he finally cancels out the debt around, I guess it was 1830. I didn't put that in my notes, but I wasn't expecting to go down that much history. And then we get into the Civil War era, and the Rothschilds are trying to find a way to take over. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so we can. Yeah. So the Rothschilds were trying to find a way to bankrupt the United States and create another Bank of the United States. So, and they offered Lincoln insane usurious rates of 18 to 20%. So actually, I think it was a little more higher, 20%. But yes, to loan money for the war. So he created his own money, the greenbacks, and issued it, and he helped finance the Civil War. And we also got help from the Tsar Nicholas of Russia at the time. I think it was Tsar Nicholas II. I don't know if I get that one right. But they parked their ships in New York and San Francisco Harbor. And then, of course, once they knocked him off, the Rothschilds, they have financed John Wilkes Booth to go in there and to exterminate him. Lincoln. But in 1871, that brings us back to the Organic Act of 1871. The bankers created an ingenious plan. So the Republic was already in sine die, which means that Congress had abandoned its post. When the South left the Congress, they could no longer hold a lawful body. So the Republic of the United States had basically been abandoned because of the Civil War. So the bankers created this ingenious idea where they would bring us back under. They would create a new corporate government, and it was called the Organic Act of DC of 1871. Actually, I think there was more to it, and that I can look up the exact name. But the point is that the Organic Act basically incorporated Washington D.C. And so later on, there was other rulings that allowed them to expand their federal powers outside the territory of Washington to D.C. So, but ultimately, that's all they controlled. So, and then so that's going on. The bankers got control of the U.S. And now Saint Germain comes back onto the scene around 1880. He shows up to work with royalty to put aside their money. There are enormous amounts of wealth into the Foundation Divine under World Trust, and I guess that goes on to all the sovereign trusts and the collateral accounts. I'm sorry, that's what I was thinking. The collateral accounts. So the collateral accounts were set up, and you can see right there it has enormous amount of wealth. I mean, you can just say, well, just throw whatever number you want out there. it's mind-boggling. There's plenty of money for everybody. So the point is that this money is supposed to be released on the year 2000, and it was supposed to be distributed through a network of different trusts. So we have through Foundation Divine, we got Collateral Accounts and World Trust, and then we have the sovereign trusts for not just royalty but different countries as well. And then underneath the sovereign trust, the money flows into the robber baron family trusts. And then it goes below them to the transnational corporation trusts. There are about, I think, 250 of those. Then under that, there's 72 bankroll trusts, which are meant for humanitarian purposes. So we have, like, for instance, we got the Rodriguez Trust, which is responsible to help rebuild America, like a Marshall Plan we did in Germany. And then we also have the Five Star Trust, which is used for the CIA by Black Ops. Now, typically, to get into one of these bankroll programs, you would need a minimum of $100 million, and they would trade between central banks and make about 2% per day per trade. So they could turn that $100 million. It could easily double, go anywhere between 30 to 100% interest per month. They run it for about a year, and then there's plenty of money there. And so that money is supposed to be put for humanitarian purposes, but most of the time the money's going into the secret space program. In the 80s, the program bankroll was open up to investors like us who don't have that kind of money. Just for a little $100, you can get in, but they have not been paid. So they're all supposed to be part of the Nesara settlement, and that'll come up in just a bit. So then in 45, the Bretton Woods set up and by the way, I just skipped a lot of history with, with the Federal Reserve and all that, but we'll get back to that just a bit. So, but the collateral accounts were put under management of the Trilateral Tripartite Commission, which is like a division under the UN. And that was going on between 45 to 95. So the CIA was tasked under the TTTC to protect the money in the collateral accounts, but that quickly turned really bad because the CIA, by the way, the Bush family has enormous amounts of real estate down in Paraguay and Uruguay. So a lot of this, that's where a lot of the collateral accounts were. They were down there trying to get a hold of that money because the Bush family was stealing it for the secret space program and for whatever New World Order plans he had. But we'll go into that just a bit. So that's in 45. And now 2 years later, the United States lost World War II at the Battle of the it's Operation High Jump. That's where we got our butts kicked in Antarctica because all the Nazis with their very advanced technology went to Antarctica to build up a base. The base, was it base 211? I think it's called. So at that point, the Americans, when they saw how advanced technologically advanced the Nazis were, because they basically embraced Nikola Tesla's research, who was, I guess he was still alive in 47. I don't think he was alive much longer, but at that point. Anyway, the point is that the Americans realized that they wanted to make an agreement to get that technology from the Nazis. Instead of trying to fight them, they decided to do a joint venture. So the terms of this ceasefire, I guess you could call it, were that the United States would allow the Nazis to abduct 50,000 Americans per year to be used in the secret space program in exchange for technology exchanges. So that's where Americans started being abducted. And matter of fact, who is it? Who is the two abductees in Maine? The black and female white couple. It was like the Betty and Betty Hill. Do you remember that? It was just a classic abduction case. What they don't really talk about is that there were Nazi people officials aboard. So that was just the beginning of it back then. So when that was going on, so that's when Americans started being abducted. Even though the ETs have been abducting people longer than that, but in particular for these 20-year back missions. So at that point, so the money through the collateral accounts and these secret funds were all being flooded into the secret space program to build out bases on Mars, Moon, and off-world, even further out in the galaxy. They're all over the place, and it's a whole nother show. We could talk about that stuff, and not right now. But that's the ICC is being controlled by a group of mobster families called the shoot. I swear I had it right. I practiced that. Triumvirated, triumvirate.
Yes.
Something like that. Okay. Yeah. So these are basically the people at the top of the pyramid, and I don't know who they are. The name Pacer came up. I don't think even Rothschild's involved because these are German. These are the Germans and the Rothschilds. Okay, so this goes back into 55 when Eisenhower. Once Eisenhower became fully briefed on how advanced the technology was of the Nazis, they realized they need to put their people in there. So that's another reason why they wanted to do it. They want to put their people into the German program to spy on them, I guess. But because they still had this mindset, and they still do, by the way, that they need to beat the Germans. Then we still want to win the war. The war is still going on. But the Germans are so technologically advanced, there's just no way I mean, the Dark Fleet could come in right now and annihilate this whole planet if they wanted to, but they don't, because we got other ETs watching us, and they don't, honestly, they don't care too much about planet Earth because they got their colony. Anyway, the point is, let's move on here because we're digressing. Okay, so that's all going on. We know where the money's going. Let's go back to, of course, let's go back to the Federal Reserve Act because it's focusing here on planet Earth. So of course, we all know Federal Reserve Act is the Civil War debts were all coming due. Government couldn't pay them, so the bankers provided an alternative. If you go along the Federal Reserve Act, we will allow you to refinance these loans, at least for another 20 years. So they put Woodrow Wilson into power, and he went along with it. So 1933, now those loans are coming due, and they couldn't pay it. So now they decide to declare bankruptcy. They confiscate all the people's gold under the Gold Confiscation Act, Confiscation Act. I couldn't say that right. And the Tradings with the Enemy Act of 33. That's that was under Roosevelt who did that. So in my opinion, Roosevelt, he wasn't really in a really bad place anyway, because they were trying to do the Nazis were trying to take over the government at that time, and there was a huge conspiracy there. I think it was General Smedley or Smedley? I can't remember. It was a general, who realized a lot of international financiers, corporations were all involved with these Nazis to try to take over the corporation of the United States. And Roosevelt, it was uncovered and brought to his attention. And so instead of going after these people, what he did is he told them, you need to sign the New Deal. If you go along with the New Deal and then I'll look the other way of your transgressions. So at that point, that's where he was able to get a lot of, Social Security and all that. So he, in his mind, he tried to make the best of a really bad situation. But anyway, so the bankers had us pinned to the wall. It just kept getting worse and worse. 62, the IMF had full control of the Federal Reserve, and then they took us. The governors met in Lexington, Kentucky, to incorporate all the states, and that goes back to the Organic Act of 1871. They didn't have the jurisdiction, because the Republic has been abandoned, so they had to reincorporate their own states within this corporation of the United States. So they all became like sub-corporations or their own type of corporation within this. And that allowed them to comply with the Uniform Commercial Code, the Code of Federal Regulations, which are not laws. They're just codes. And that's where, the IRS is not really a law. It's a code. Are we good on time?
Yeah, we got about 15 minutes.
Okay. All right. So, and I'm only halfway done. Okay. So, Kennedy tried to stop him. Then Nixon. So it just kept going on and on and on. And then around the 70s is when the military generals come on board, and they tried to stop a lot of these illegal bank foreclosures. So that's where these banking foreclosures went all the way up to the Supreme Court, where they were conducting investigations. And then eventually the Supreme Court ruled that the farmers indeed had their property stolen by the banks. But the banks said that they can't, that they appealed their case because the bank said they were not a business, but a federal agency. So as a result, they weren't able to sue them as a business. Now, according to the Federal Land Bank's charter, so as you can see, the banks are only allowed to be a guarantor of default. So we already know that. But these particular banks were loaning money directly. So if they're a federal agency, they're not allowed to make loans directly. Are you following me, or are you lost?
Yeah, no, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So are they a business or are they a federal agency? They can't be both when it's convenient for them. So now, since they claim they were a business, what they did here is they were able to not only go after that, for making illegal loans. But they also found right here, under the National Banking Act, these banks were required to register their charter under the federal and state bureaus of records as federal agencies. They didn't do that. So that's where it comes into them being businesses. They're not fully educated. And so because of that, oh yeah, it goes all the way here. American Banking Association, quasi-government organizations such as Federal Housing Administration, Department of Housing and Urban Development, even Federal Reserve Bank. So none of these banks are allowed to operate as a federal agency since they're a business. Now, so because of that, and then it goes on here, more evidence was provided that the IRS was a Puerto Rican trust and under the control of the IMF, and that tax amendment was not ratified. And there's some other more things you can read that if you want. But so then the Supreme Court ruled in their favor. So that goes back into 1991. George Bush Sr., of course, we know Sr. was already connected with the CIA, and that goes back to the cloud accounts and the money that's going in the secret space program and all the Tesla technology. But so Bush Sr. was trying to create a new world order, which was supposed to be announced on December 25th, 92. But the military stopped all that, and they had their task force. They started doing investigations. And so there's senators and judges involved. And look at this. There was an audit. Of course, they audited the Federal Reserve. But more important, so they found $800 trillion in accounts not applied to the national debt in the audit in 1992. And that's 1992 money. I mean, that's. And then 2 out of 535 congressmen and women were only deemed to be honest. The rest were all bribed. Wow. And So at that point, they realized we had a huge mess. And you can read about the Ross Perot thing. Or he actually won that election, but the voting machines were rigged. So now we have Clinton and Reno in office, and they tentatively agreed to it because Bush Sr. was certainly not going to go along with it. So the military was like, okay, well, Clinton says he'll go along with it. But and that's where I guess Janet Reno, did I pass that yet? Or Janet Reno? Yeah, right here, June 3rd. So they went in and recovered the gold that was taken by the banks. And then they start putting together these bank claim processes where people can apply for redress. And they also put together these accords in 1998, which creates, implements the banking changes, not just with the Federal Reserve, but the IMF, World Bank. So it was basically recommendations that were to be put into place. So these recommendations, when the military realized, about 2 years later, around 98, they realized the Supreme Court had no intention in implementing any of these accords. So they created a 75-page document called Nesara, which is the National Economic Security and Reformation Act. It sat in Congress for a year. And then, of course, I know I could spell security, but there's a lot of people out there promoting the Harvey Bernard's Recovery Act. That was never passed by Congress. Harvey Bernard worked for the Bush family, and he was COINTELPRO to confuse people, and it's still going on there today. I don't understand why anybody even has to have confusion. If they watch Changes on the Horizon, then they know. All you gotta do is just a little bit of research, and Wikipedia is promoting it. It's just, you're not going to find good quality info out there. That's what. Anyway, the point is, watch Changes on the Horizon. Okay, March 9th, we had a written quorum call was issued by Congress. So they did the same thing that they did at the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. They did a quorum call, and they got the 15 members of Congress who were allowed to be congressmen or women under TONA, which is the Titles of Nobility Amendment. It's complicated, but basically attorneys and doctors are not allowed to run for office because they have a title of nobility to another foreign power, which is the Crown of England. But so only 15 members were allowed to vote on it, and of course they voted on it. There it is right there, TONA. So this is what right here with Nesara implements, zeroes out all debt. So we have Jubilee, gets rid of IRS and income tax. We'll have a national sales tax around 14%. And it may be a little bit higher, maybe closer to 17%, because your states might add another three points or so. So creates benefits to senior citizens, returns as constitutional law, restates title nobility, and new elections in 120 days. A new currency is issued, and then of course I didn't even go into the chattel property bonds. You have to watch Changes on the Horizon. And then we got eliminates the Federal Reserve, retrains all judges, ceases all aggressive actions worldwide, and releases all these patents and money. Yeah, I think the money is the most exciting part. But yeah, so that was signed into law by Bill Clinton, October 10, 2000, and then September 9th, 2001. So about a year or so later, Supreme Court finally passed the resolutions approving Nesara, and then it was September 10th, 2001, George Bush Sr. moved into the White House to steer his son how to block the announcement. September 11th, 2001, Nesara was to be announced at 10 a.m., where Alan Greenspan was going to announce the new U.S. Treasury banking system, debt for all, forgiveness for all U.S. citizens, abolishment of the IRS. Just before that announcement at 9 a.m., Bush Sr. ordered the demolition of the World Trade Center, and there were micronukes, and there was also holograms that flew into the towers, and then explosives. Yeah, you probably know the story, but they also destroyed the Naval Command Center, the White Knights. That is the Office of Naval Investigations, if I'm not mistaken. It went into the Pentagon. So after that happened, of course, we went off to a war of terror, which terror was, I guess, who were the real terrorists? I mean, to me, it's obvious, but 2001 to 2007, Bush Jr. continues to block the announcement of Nesara. They were doing a lot of shenanigans. I talk about this in the video. You can watch it if you want to learn about what all the stuff that was going on in that time period. So there was a counteraction plan put in place by the global family, which are some of these light and robber baron children, these Illuminati family bloodliners who were working with Saint Germain, put together their own counter plan in place. So that's where they agreed by 2007 that we need to end all war, to improve the environment, and to provide abundance for people. So all the nations that agreed to this, the nations that would not agree to this would be cut off from the international banking community. So I'm fairly confident the U.S. didn't agree to it, and that's what we started having the derivatives started to implode, but maybe they eventually came online back to it. But anyway, the point is we got new U.S. Treasury bank system went in place, Basel II, and then that's when the derivatives started to implode. And the banks were kind of like wishy-washy. Even though an enormous amount of capital be flooded into the banks through Nesara, they had all these derivatives that were worthless. So they wanted them to be reset at a level that benefited them. So that was all going back and forth. And then at that point, we get Obama comes into office, and even before he got into office, he was already trying to steal money from these accounts where the money was being held to release for Americans. And the guy was extremely arrogant about it. And you can listen to it in the video if you want to hear all the stuff. But going on here, the derivatives implode. And then around and going back and forth, Obama's constantly about the year 2015, the military was considering doing a coup to remove Obama, but they reached out to Trump and they said, would you be willing to cooperate with Nesara? And of course he says yes. So this time around, they know how to work and how to stop the voting machines to get hacked. And they got him into office. And there goes the Paris Accord. Now, I don't know how much because Nesara is supposedly going to be implemented worldwide, and it was supposed to be through the Paris Agreement. So I can't confirm all that, but anyway, so moving on here, we actually left the Paris Agreement. We're supposed to leave in November 2020, which might be a date to look at when the Nesara might be implemented. But anyway, QAnon. So October 2017, and I'm on the last page, so we're almost done here. QAnon begins posting, and from what I think QAnon is, based on my research, it's a group of 1,500 military personnel various Department of Defense and Secret Space Program council members, including the Alliance, which, by the way, is a splinter group from Solar Warden and Darkfleet, and its directors, admiral from Naval Intelligence, and receiving their mandate from a quantum computer in the future, where the word Q has come from. That's because we're about to hit a singularity of technology and computer AI. So AI in the future wants the most positive timeline that benefits both of us. And that they chose Donald Trump because they knew getting the debt jubilee and the technology released the secret space program. And I wish I was trying to find this because here's the rest of my notes here. But I don't know what, you can look this up if you want to, but there was Donald Trump signed an executive order which basically freezes the assets of child traffickers. I forgot the name of the executive order. It's
I remember. Yeah.
Okay. But in that executive order, so it freezes the assets. So that's been going on for at least the first, he did that in his first year of his presidency. So that's been going on since he got in office. And so that account has $100 trillion in it now. So half of that money was supposed to be rolled out for Space Force to usher in the advanced technology of the secret space program. At least I say advanced. They're going to release like the old tech that they had back in the 1950s, but the most advanced stuff is like they're like 300 or 400 years in the future, more advanced than what we have. But they're gonna release that. So they'll release the old advanced stuff, but it will be like med technology where you can regenerate your arm or you can become younger if you want to. There'll be technologies where you can have replicators in your house. Like I said, it'll be more advanced than Star Wars or Star Trek combined. So so that's all going to come into place in Trump's second term. Of the second half of his second term was the plan. Now, the other $50 trillion of this account was going to be used for a new gold-backed dollar. Now, I know there's all these other accounts. I can't say what's going to happen to Nesara because Trump's got money. He can do his own thing without Nesara. Maybe that money's all locked up by trustees because the trustees of these trusts are like the Clintons and so on. So they're doing their mass arrest. They're taking them to Gitmo, getting them off the trust, the boards, and maybe that money can eventually be released. But right now, Trump is working with what he's got. He's got this, and that's where the Democrats or whoever you want to call it, the dark state, deep state, releases the COVID, and the COVID accelerates the timeline because the cabal knew they're pretty much finished because they're already, look right here, March 22nd, 2018, a bill introduced into House of Representatives to return to the U.S. gold-backed dollar. And then this was actually the gold standard finally became implemented worldwide in November 1st. So, so we were already going on the gold standard in November, and that's exactly right around the time when the COVID thing came out. So they knew they couldn't impeach them, and now we're going on the gold standard, and they lost control of the Federal Reserve. So they want to release COVID, and then that just pushed the timeline forward. They got the money to release a lot quicker. So that $6 trillion is coming out of that $100 trillion for the American CARES Act, and I think it's called, but all the stimulus money. By the way, that act was introduced into Congress on the docket in January of 2019. So Trump must have known that this COVID thing was going to happen, that they were planning on doing something like this. So he went ahead and had somebody put into the docket a plan to help Americans release funds because he knew some of that $100 trillion was going to need to go back to Americans. So he knew some things were up. Maybe I can't tell you how much he actually knows. I don't have, a bug in the wall inside the White House, but I'm just trying to provide you the best view of what I think is going on here. So there you have it. And that should not be right there. So we are at the present era. I can only guess what's going to happen. And I think we may see Nesara this month. But I thought it was going to be July 6th, 2020. But because of the 120 days, it's supposed to be new elections, which would bring us to November 3rd. But you know, timelines are in flux. Maybe it'd be a slow version of Nesara. They just slowly release a little bit of money. I heard one thing they're going to do is they're going to flood so much low interest rate loans into the system. They'll basically put all the banks out of business. I mean, if they could just issue unlimited 1% interest rate loans from the SBA with the PPP money, nobody's going to want to go to a bank again. I mean, why would you need to? And they just keep issuing more and more loans. It doesn't matter because eventually, when all the advanced technology comes into place, hyperinflation, nobody's going to care about hyperinflation because we'll have replicators and all this advanced tech. So there you have it. This was written by me, but so if you want to get the transcript for the documentary, you can go to Amazon and get that. So yeah, David, yeah. And then also I have another book here. This is my other website, Neological Tech, my meditation cubes, but I only got like a couple copies left. So if you want to get one, you should do it right away because they're almost gone. And it may be a while before I get more in. But yeah, so there you have it. I mean, I got another website. If you want, my other website is Super Soldier Talk, and that's my other YouTube channel. So you can check out some of my interviews. This is supersoldiertalk.com, and you can learn more about the Secret Space program because I was a participant in that as well. Do you have any questions for me? Actually, stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, so that's a lot, and I just have a couple questions. So when you're talking about forgiveness of debt, you're talking about like mortgages, car notes, like all of that, right?
Well, I mean, if you borrowed money from your friends or the mafia, I mean, you're probably still going to have to owe them. But everything that's been issued through one of the Federal Reserve intermediaries, that's all supposed to be going away.
That is really interesting, and definitely Trump is involved. He knows what's going on. And he knew before he even got in what he was getting into, right?
Well, that's what I heard. I mean, I can't confirm it whether or not that's the truth or not, but I certainly think it is. I mean, the guy, one of the ways he made, I mean, he was actually in some of the bankroll programs. That's where he got some of the money for his real estate development. But but he's no longer allowed into them. I guess they realized he was trying to use the money to help people. But I mean, Trump has always been a really positive person, even in the other alternate reality where the Nazis won World War II. We can go a whole other story into that if you want, but
we can go all day about Looking Glass and other realities and all of that. And I mean, what do you say to people who are like triggered by Trump and just like, these riots, and it's like, what do you do these, I don't know what D level, I would say 3D, but is it even 3D of what their abilities to even get like the truth of anything that you're saying, and or seeing the goodness in what he's doing and all the things that he's done versus just like, all the programming. Like, how do we wake up people?
Well, first of all, I heard that George Floyd is actually still alive, and he may be part of one of the mass arrests that are going to occur. He may end up in Gitmo. So if that's the case, I would think Trump would have a counteraction plan in place, and it will basically shame these people. But let's just say George Floyd, for whatever intents purposes, is no longer with us. The point is, a lot of these protesters, they're a bunch of anarchists and communists, and they have been looking for years as a way to destabilize the United States. And Obama was certainly looking for ways on doing that, because Obama and Hillary Clinton, had Hillary Clinton been elected, were looking to create World War III and the another martial law scenario where there'd be civil war in the United States, and they could just take away our rights and our Constitution to implement the New World Order. So that timeline, this is basically a reverberation of what's left of their policies. So and actually, I want to mention Black Lives Matter. 90% of the money donated to Black Lives Matter is going to the Democratic Party via the proxy of Act Blue. And you could actually go to their website and if you make a donation, it takes you to the Act Blue page. And then if you look up where the money from Act Blue is going, you're seeing Friends of Joe Biden, the Bernie Sanders campaign, and then, so Elizabeth Warren is not giving any money to Donald Trump. So the point is, Black Lives Matter, for all, in my opinion, in all intents and purposes, is the Democratic Party. So yeah, and only I think only what 17% of the protesters are Black and Black Lives Matter. The rest are either Hispanic, Asian, 43% are white. So that just shows you right there. It's not what we're being told.
Yeah, it is a lot of information, and so frustrating with the COVID stuff, and me being a doctor and knowing other doctors who are in the same positions where everything has to be marked COVID, or you lose your license, or you get fired, and all the extra testing, one person being tested 7 times, and or people who don't even get tested, but then they're just walk into a hospital to get tested, and they're not even tested. They go home, they find out that they were positive, but they never got tested. I mean, I have my own patients who walked into emergency rooms for situations outside of my care, and they were either contained and told they had to stay 5 days or whatever, and calling me going I don't want to stay here. How do I get out of here? Whatever. And then they go look on their records, and their records sitting outside the door, and the little stand deal showing that they're tested positive already, and they had only been in there in the waiting room and not even had anything done yet. So I was there is just so much, they need to get the numbers, and they're getting paid for the numbers, and they're getting paid for, lying, and the governors, the masks. I mean, it goes on, and how it's affecting people. Their suicide rates are up, alcoholism's up, divorce is up, child stuff, abuse is up. I'm one, who's hearing all this and involved in all of these people and what's happening, and angst and depression is high, and people are confused. And then there's some people who just literally are fearful that all of this is real, and they're not understanding that there is so much behind this that has nothing to do with a false flag, freak out, fake. Now the virus is real, but it just isn't what they're saying, and it's way less than anything of the common flu. So, I don't know. I just appreciate you unpacking all this, and I know there's way more information, and I would encourage every one of you to follow the link that I'm going to provide for everyone to actually watch the documentary. Stop, start, take notes, do your own research, look into things, and don't just believe what James is saying or what I'm saying, but do your own diligence and look up these things with, responsibility of actually just looking into it, because I don't want you guys to ever, just believe whatever you hear or what you see on the news, for God's sakes, or whatever, but just actually do your own research and take some common sense pills, and see that there's something behind all of this. And, when we get to that point where we do have the medical, and, we do have the free transportation, and we do have, the med beds and all of these other things that are going to be so amazing to just literally change the face of the earth, because we're not going to need drugs anymore. So pharmakia is out, which is witchcraft. We're not going to need, gas anymore. We're going to be able to get to even off planet, pretty quick without having to do things. I mean, there's so many things that the replicators, like you said, it's going to change everything. And so the sooner the better. And also it's just prayers and being awake and trying to help other people through these processes in the end. But I do want to thank you. And I definitely want to encourage everybody to follow you on Facebook, to go to your YouTubes, to, get your book, to definitely watch the documentary, and just to do your own diligence in this. And again, I thank you. We're going to have you back for sure. to unpack a few more different subjects that we sort of lighted on a little bit, but didn't get to go down those paths. And I'd love to have you back sometime.
Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you so much, Sharnael. I would love to come back. Thank you.
Awesome.
Let's
Well,
plan it.
thank you, sir. And have a great week. And we will see you guys later too. God bless you and your family. And we'll talk soon. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.